Good morning, beautiful people. Marie Alessi here with another meaningful mindset. Today, I would love to share something that is very close to my heart because it really is part of my authenticity as well, of my um, identity, and that is I am a strong woman. And if you ask anybody around me, closest friends, family, or even people here in the group, everybody would agree with that I am a strong woman. And today I decided that I would like to unpack that a little bit with you because I understand that here in this group, there are a lot of us, a lot of you classify as this strong woman, and I believe it is time to unpack that and look at the flip side of it. What is behind all that package? Something came up literally last week in my program Blank Canvas where I spontaneously gave this little speech about the strong woman and what it entitles and what comes with it that made me decide to go live in the Meaningful Mindset series and actually unpack that a little bit further. And here is the thing. I often talk about the hidden gifts in adversity, and one of my biggest hidden gifts in my adversity was an enormous strength that I felt after Rob passed. I already considered myself a strong woman before Rob died, but after he passed, it literally felt like his whole strength literally poured into me, and it just doubled and quadrupled and literally exploded. I was absolutely blown away by my own strength. Sometimes it really overwhelmed me. I had no idea where that strength was coming from. And as soon as I say that, it actually, makes me think, well, of course I do know where it came from. It came from Rob. And it also came from the triggers when you go through adversity that intense. It really triggers your strengths and your weaknesses. And it really highlights the strengths that you have because that's where you need them the most. All of us are familiar with the term lion mom, and I am such a lion mom. When somebody does something or says something about my kids, I roar and I flare up and I become the defender, and I just hiss and roar and whatever needs to be done for my babies not to get hurt. That is just such a natural instinct of a true loving parent to defend your little ones. And that is something very similar. When there is danger somewhere around the corner and you sense it, it triggers those primal strengths within you. They just fire up like that. There's nothing that you need to do, nothing you need to think about. It's an inbuilt, automated reaction, a very primal reaction that you don't need to think about or trigger. It's just there. It happens in a split second. And the same thing happens with adversity. When adversity gets thrown at you completely unexpected, it triggers the strength within you that you might have never known that you have. So here's what happens. The strength to me is like I compare that to tent poles. When you want to build a huge circus tent and you have these really strong poles that you need to put up, there is this certain amount of tension that you need to create for it to hold the heavy circus tent. And what happens is when somebody comes that wants to help you, speaking of, they are going to put one other tent pole in there that doesn't match with yours, and you're not really sure about how strong is that. Does that actually really hold my circus tent up? Does that really support the weight that needs to be carried? And that is such a perfect comparison for what's happening in your life. You have a certain amount of weight that you carry, the burdens that you carry, or even just the chores. They don't just always have to be burdens, but the chores that you do each day, they have to be carried. They have to be, here's my dog scratching upstairs. I don't know what she's doing, but I hope she's not wrecking my living room. So anyway, they have to support a certain weight and they have to have a certain tension. And when somebody comes to offer you help, you are not certain whether that pole has got the same quality like your own because you have not checked whether they hold enough weight, whether they bear enough tension, whether they would be able to support your tent, if that makes sense. So when you have built your tent and everything is up and running, and then somebody comes and wants to help you, it is like replacing one of those main poles, and it is really quite scary sometimes to allow other people in to help you hold up that tension, to help you hold up that tent, that circus, that house around you, if that makes sense. And when you think of the beautiful tent being built and you start pulling out pole after pole, eventually it will collapse. And that is your underlying fear that could happen if you only let go of one or two or three of your chores, like picking up the kids, cooking dinner for you, taking over. For you to show a little bit of weakness is impossible because there is this underlying fear that if you let go, that the whole tent will collapse. So what happens is if we are always in that strong space in holding everything up and not allowing anybody in to help us to replace one of the poles, to maybe start holding one of these poles for us, we have this as our identity. This strength becomes our label. And what we do is we constantly live up to that label because what happens if we don't? There's always this what happens. What if that tent collapses? What if everything just falls down on me and then I have to rebuild everything from scratch? And that thought is scary. It really is because it took you so much time to build this whole tent on your own. And now you've built this beautiful tent. You don't want that to collapse. There is an underlying fear and not trusting other people and not trusting your own strength. What if it collapses? Do I have to rebuild? Do I have the strength to start from scratch? Because that is really our biggest fear. If we let go of just one thing, if we just allow one person in to replace something for us that we usually do, i.e. cooking dinner, a very simple example, well, then I have to pick it up again tomorrow. Sometimes we can't think that far ahead, that it's okay to just let one person cook dinner for you for one night. It's like, woohoo, one night off. It took me so much to understand that if I let somebody in to help me, that it doesn't mean that my whole circus collapses, if that makes sense. I really thought it would. I was scared that if I let anybody in, that my circus would collapse, my tent would collapse, and I would have to build from scratch. And not only that, I would have to drag myself out underneath this whole pile of, I don't know where to start and how to rebuild this. It was a really scary thought. I had to learn after Rob passed to allow people in to help me, to take care of my kids. Oh my God, that was the biggest thing for me, to let go of being the sole carer for my kids just for one moment. You still are anyway, but to let go of somebody else, to somebody else take your kids even just for a day, for half a day, for a couple of hours, or God forbid a sleepover or two. That was a huge thing for me. And it was a big thing for my boys too, because they felt what I felt. What you feel, you automatically pass on to your children. If you say it out loud or not, they feel your vibe. And if you are sitting in love, they feel that because there's love, there's trust, there is a surrendering that doesn't kill you because it comes wrapped in trust and in love, in trusting other people, your beautiful friends or family, to care for them. It takes a lot to sit in that love, to sit in that surrendering. But when you sit in fear, they feel that too. They too become insecure or might even develop a certain amount of anxiety. What if I'm not safe? Because that's what you truly feel inside when you don't allow other people in to help you, to take over, to help you take care of your kids. You are sitting in fear. You're sitting in that mistrust. That what if something happens to them when I'm not around? What if this person doesn't care as well for my child or for my children as I do? Because let's face it, we never think that anybody else can take care of our kids as well as we do. And that might just be the case, but that's not what we're talking about here. We are not talking about giving up the care altogether. We're talking about giving them a couple of hours with somebody else, or a day or two. That might be such a fun break for them. They too might need a break from the norm, or even from you. God forbid. I know, it's shocking, isn't it? And to me, that was the biggest thing, to actually get to the point of, wow, what happens if I let go? I was always worried about everything collapsing or losing control of something. And being in control is really such a strong need when you go through adversity, because something happens that is completely out of control and it triggers a certain amount of fear, a huge amount of fear. And I think it is really important that we see that. For me, there's always that same circle: see it, acknowledge it, heal it. And we need to do that with this particular fear, that when we go through an adversity like that we are sitting in this fear, that I love the message. Thank you so much. Thank you for watching, and thank you for all the love that you're sending me here. It is really beautiful for me to be surrounded and enveloped with this love when I do these lives, because this is a really huge and very emotional topic for me to talk about. So I want to come back to that sitting in fear, and when your children actually feel that. And as I said, even if you don't say it out loud, you're vibing that fear. They feel your fear, and they too start thinking, what if? They too start questioning, am I safe when I leave my mom, my dad, whoever is left behind? And I can promise you, when you work on healing that, see it, acknowledge, heal it. When you work on healing that, you're not doing only yourself a favor, you're doing your children a favor, because you teach them how to learn how to trust, how to learn to accept help in, how to learn to let themselves be supported and not always have to carry everything yourself. Now, here's the flip side to the strong woman. Not only when you are constantly in that strength and you're not giving up any of that, aka not allowing any help in or support in from people who love you, who want to help, not only are you depriving people from that beautiful feeling of, oh, there's one thing I can do to help. Because let's face it, that's a gift for your friends and family if you allow them in. If they have that feeling, oh my God, I'm so grateful that I can help. It took me a lot to get to that point, to actually see it from that point of view, that it's not just me who lost Rob. It's his whole family, our whole circle of friends that have lost him too. So for them to be allowed into a position to help you gives them the feeling, thank goodness there's one thing I can do. It's a gift for them. I really want you to understand that. It is a gift that you can give them. It is you who needs to allow that in, because you are the one holding everything together. You are that strong woman or man. So when we look at the flip side of that, what stands behind that whole circus tent, that whole tension, that whole holding everything upright by yourself? It becomes extremely lonely. That is one thing that I had to admit to myself, and it was really hard, that when you sit in that, I can and I have to do everything by myself, it becomes extremely lonely in there. And then you sit in that tent and you're surrounded by this whole audience of beautiful friends and family who are there just watching you and are not allowed to participate. Not only do you completely shut them off, but you are really lonely inside. Surrounded by friends and family, yet completely lonely. Does that sound familiar? It certainly is to me. I am truly surrounded by a lot of friends and family. I'm very, very blessed to have a huge circle of friends all around the world, and I've got a really beautiful circle of very, very close friends. Yet there are times where I don't know how to allow them in, not even the closest ones, because my fear of collapsing and not being able to rebuild myself fast enough, or that it would take me more strength to rebuild myself rather than allowing them in, has given me a lot of really lonely times. Yet I had to sit with that loneliness as well to learn. And it was a trigger for me to learn to open up, to learn to reach out. And that reaching out takes more strength and more courage than keeping that tent upright, if that makes sense. And I want you to really sit with that and allow that message in. How much strength does it cost you? And how much courage does it need to reach out to people to ask for help when you are at rock bottom? Can you feel that? It's scary, isn't it? I really felt that multiple times before I started learning, and it's still a work in progress for me, I can promise you that. And I find it's still tricky to reach out, but I have found my ways, and I have found my people, my go-to people, that when I hit rock bottom, that I can send a message to, or that I can just send a love heart to, or one emoji, and they know to reach out to me, because sometimes I'm lost for words. I Last week when I went through my two anniversaries, my what would have been my 15th wedding anniversary and then my 2-year anniversary of Loving Love After Loss, that was such an emotional ride for me. There was so much love and beauty in all these anniversaries, and I really celebrated them. I celebrated me. On the wedding anniversary, I went out for took myself to the movies, had my beautiful, amazing kahuna massage. It was so beautiful and healing. To allow that in was huge for me, to allow that touch, that healing in. It was really big for me. I remember actually being nervous for the first time in my life for a massage, which was really bizarre. But I needed it so badly, and I had such huge expectations of it that I literally had a little bit of anxiety before that. And then I completely allowed myself to let go and allow it all in. And it was so healing and nurturing and so well received. I really needed it. It was so, oh, it really shifted a lot of energy for me. And then the Loving Life After Loss anniversary, which was really beautiful because I shared it with so many beautiful speakers that came in and celebrated with me. And the next day I collapsed. I completely collapsed. And I'm the one always teaching you, prepare for the next day. And I thought, well, I'll be fine because the next day I'm catching up with friends and they're all friends of Rob's and I hadn't seen them for a long time. Yet what I didn't prepare for or think about was that the next day I woke up with the biggest headache, and I went back to sleep and I woke up with a migraine, and I went back to sleep and I missed my lunch and I spent all day in bed sleeping. I was completely exhausted, and I didn't realize how emotionally draining all of that had been, all that build up. And um, preparing for those 2 days. And luckily, my boys were just so amazing that day. My little one had a sleepover at a friend, so he didn't come home till like 3 p.m. My older one was very happy to spend all day on the screen and playing with his friends. And then he looked after his little brother and made dinner because I said, I'm going to literally, I wanted to drag myself out of bed to cook them dinner, and Flynn was like, "No, don't worry, Mum, I'll make something." I was like, "But I hadn't bought anything. Like literally, we had an empty fridge and nothing at home." So I thought anyway, because I wanted to go shopping after that lunch, and it's like, "No, we've got wraps, we've got honey, we've got this, we've got that. I'll make dinner for us. Don't worry, Mum." And I was like, "Oh." So I got up at 8:50 p.m. that day, which is an absolute first since my teenager years when I was in my party years, and I I so needed it. And it felt amazing to be able to allow myself to do that. That was huge for me. I don't even know where I got that from, but I don't even think it had a lot to do with strength at that moment. It was just nothing left that I voluntarily allowed that weakness to take over and for me to just collapse and sleep all day. So I want you to think about that. What are your alternatives? What are your options right now? There's this enormous strength that you keep up that costs you a lot of strength every single day. And then there is this piece in the middle that is called courage. It takes huge courage to reach out for help and to allow that in, to allow others to support you, to hold you, to hug you, to jump in and help with your children, with your household, with whatever it is that you need help with. I invite you to sit down and really feel into that. Allow yourself to feel, what is it that I need help with the most? What is it that I'm craving the most that I'm not allowing myself right now? For me, with all that social distancing and me doing everything online, my teaching, my courses, even friendships, the one thing that I'm craving the most is a hug, physical touch. That is something that is really needed. And to allow that in takes courage. To speak up about it and say, yeah, I do need a hug, takes a lot. And I am very blessed. I really am so truly blessed. And I know for a fact there are some people watching right now, you know who you are, that just rock up on my doorstep and give me a big hug because they know that's all I need in that very moment. And sometimes that's all I'm capable of allowing in. But you have no idea how much strength that actually gives you for somebody to rock up on your doorstep and give you that hug that you needed without asking, without explanation, without waiting to be asked, to just be there and hug you is the most beautiful present that I can receive. So I invite you to sit down and feel into your needs. What is it that you need the most? What would help you the most, even if it's just for one day? And before you go into, yeah, but then I need it the next day and the next day and the next day, there are a couple of options. You can test it out, try it out, how it feels to allow it in for a day. And if it's something that you need more long term, maybe you can create a roster between friends. Maybe you can create a roster with people checking in on you. It takes a whole lot of courage and strength to reach out and do that. Yet what you're doing on a day-to-day basis at the moment takes just as much strength. It's just a strength that you're already used to. But when you think about it, when you consider that and realize that both actually cost strength equally, but one is just keeping the plate spinning and the other one is allowing somebody in to take over, even if it's just for a couple of hours, test it. Trust yourself. You've got this. And trust your friends and family. They've got that. They might be spinning those plates in a different rhythm to you, but believe me, they've got you. And please think about what a gift it is for them when you allow them in, when you allow them to take over. It's the most beautiful gift of love and trust, and it will make them feel that there's finally something that they can do. I want to share two more things before I let you go. The one thing is, I had a very beautiful heart-to-heart with my sister-in-law last week. She rang me before the wedding anniversary, the day before, and she asked me how I am, and we hadn't spoken in a while. And I came to the point where I said to her how much it hurt me that nobody rang on Rob's birthday. And the first thing she said to me was, "But Marie, you never pick up the phone on those anniversaries, on those milestones." And I was like, whoops, you're right. It was such a little whoops, but such an important thing for me to have A, spoken up about it, and B, for her to have the courage to say, hold on, you never pick up the phone. And she didn't say it in a mean way, not at all. It was not in a defensive way either. It was something that I needed to hear in that very moment, because I didn't realize that I, the strong woman, is the one who shuts everybody out when it comes to these milestones. When people do reach out to me, I'm the one who puts her phone on airplane mode the whole day to not be contactable, because I can't handle people reaching out to me and showering me with sympathy. I can't do sympathy. Empathy, awesome. Love, yay, bring it in. But I fear the sympathy, and that's why I shut people out. It's an interesting observation I had about me, and I would have not realized it if Jane wouldn't have said that to me, and I'm forever grateful to her, because we had a 1.5 hour conversation after that. And I'm so grateful for that conversation that we had that. And the other topic that is sort of related that I want to bring in there before I let you go is that tiny little box that you often have to fill out on forms when you go to the doctor. And I'm not talking about the widow box. I've been there, done that. This is not what I want to talk about here today. I'm talking about the next of kin. That was a huge one for me. And I see that a lot in various widower groups, that people really do struggle with that. Not everybody's fortunate enough to have family around, so that next of kin becomes a huge question. And that, to me, really highlighted that point of loneliness more than anything else in this world. That tiny little question, next of kin, always is one of my biggest triggers. It intensifies that feeling of loneliness, and it really is like a stab straight into my heart every time when I read it. And I am lucky enough that I've got a very, very close friend in my life, and I asked him if he'd be okay if I put his name on there. And he does the same with me. We are each other's next of kin now, and I'm so grateful for this friendship, because it means the world to me. This little feeling of, I've got a name to put onto my next of kin line when I have to fill out a form is huge. And that too requires trust and honesty and a whole lot of love. So I would love for you to really think about that, who that could be for you. Maybe you've got a really close friend who's absolutely okay with putting her or his name on that line. And that in itself already adds to allowing help in, allowing someone to look after you. And with that being said, I'm sending you a whole lot of love. And if you don't know where to start, please allow me and reach out to me to have a chat. And I'd be more than happy to talk you through it. So much love to you. Have an amazing day ahead. This is Marie signing off. Bye for now.